In 1887, a group of radical workers called the Communist League commissioned two new members, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, to write on their behalf. The Communist Manifesto was originally published in London in 1848. The document sparked the beginning of a critical comprehension of capitalism as it made the oppressed people aware of their status and called them to unite by outlining the history of classes and class struggle that were said to shape society and history. World War I set the stage for a number of issues across the globe, with the public's constant tension as well as panic to what it meant for everyday life. Upon its end, at the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proposed his infamous 14 points, the most notable of them being the League of Nations, an organization designed to prevent future wars. The United States itself, however, fell back to its ideals of isolationism, as more and more Americans lamented the consequences of war and voiced their desire to avoid future intervention in foreign affairs at all costs. In 1914, Russia entered the war with vigor, but they lacked good leadership as the working-class people despised the Romanov monarchy and rule, as the poor working class made up the majority of the population. In November 6th and 7th, 1917, leftist revolutionaries led by Bolshevik Party leader Vladimir Lenin launched a coup d'état against the provisional government that had been assembled by a group of leaders from Russia's capitalist class. Lenin instead called for a Soviet government that would be ruled directly by councils of soldiers, peasants, and workers. The Bolsheviks and their allies soon formed a new government with Lenin as its head. Lenin became the dictator of the world's first communist state. This Bolshevik revolution had global consequences. Once World War I ended, the United States faced a period of deep social tensions, aggravated by high wartime inflation. Organized labor had grown in strength during the course of the war. Many unions won recognition, and the 12-hour workday was abolished. The war's end, however, was accompanied by labor turmoil, as labor demanded union recognition, shorter hours, raises exceeding the inflation rate. Over 4 million workers, 1/5 of the nation's workforce, participated in strikes in 1919, including 365,000 steelworkers and 400,000 miners. This organization and striking was key to the alleged spread of communism and anarchism in the American labor movement. On top of economic and labor struggles in the U.S., in 1917, Congress passed the Espionage Act, making it illegal to mail literature advocating or urging treason, insurrection, or forcible resistance to the laws of the United States. A year later, Congress passed the Sedition Acts, which forbid anything disloyal, profane, or abusive being either spoken or written about the U.S. government or Constitution. The Espionage Act was intended to be in effect only during wartime, but the law continued to be invoked following the end of World War I during the first Red Scare, as it was a product of wartime hysteria and the common American fear of foreigners, spies, and communists. On April 30th, a postal clerk in New York discovered bombs in 20 packages addressed to a variety of government officials. The bombs were set to explode the next day on May Day. The attack was the set starting point for America's first Red Scare, but it was only the first of many. The bombings were a concerted effort among U.S.-based anarchists who were most likely affiliated with Luigi Galani, a horribly radical anarchist who advocated violence as a means to effect change, to rid the world of capitalism and laws. Anarchism is a belief that society should have no government, laws, police, or any other authority. The majority of anarchists in the U.S. advocate change through nonviolent, non-criminal means. However, a small minority believe that change can only be accomplished through violence and criminal acts. In 1919, Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer set up the General Intelligence Division, known as the Radical Division, within the Bureau of Investigation, and gave 24-year-old Edgar Hoover the power over it. Hoover became head of the entire bureau in 1924, when it had some 650 employees. He remained the director of what was in 1935 renamed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, until his death in 1972. Under Attorney General Palmer, Hoover compiled a list of radicals and before long had 200,000 names. The list was key to the 1919 through 1920 roundup and deportation of mainly immigrants known as the Palmer Raids. The list was to grow to 450,000 names in the aftermath of the raids, and the General Intelligence Division of the Bureau continued to conduct wiretapping and break-ins. The Red Scare caused many innocent people to be afraid to express their ideas. They feared they might be accused of being a communist. But as quickly as the Red Scare swept across the country, so too did it end in 1920. By the summer of 1920, the Red Scare was over. Even a large bomb explosion in New York in September did not change the opinion of most Americans that the nation should return to free speech and the rule of law. However, the fear of communism was still very much real, and the nationwide terror would come again in the late 1940s and 50s.